Okay, hello guys, and welcome back to Relevant Founders, brought to you by Relevant Software. Relevant is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers world-class standard products for Fortune 500 companies and promising startups. Today we've got with us Krish, CEO and co-founder of Fireflies. Krish, hello, how are you?
Hey there, Matthew. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me on.
Likewise, thank you for coming on, and thank you for coming on so late. I hear it's 11 p.m. your side, so quite a late one.
Yeah, absolutely. 11 p.m. is like the new normal, so it's all good.
Okay,
we have a team that's globally distributed, so this is all great.
We'll get to this in a bit, because actually this is something which doing some research on your company, doing some research on yourself as well, and how much work and effort and how much time that you've put into building Fireflies, that work-life balance is sometimes a thing. Well, it's a difficult thing to find, I guess, when you're building a startup. So we'll speak about that a little bit later. So just for some context, guys. So Fireflies is an AI meeting system that takes notes, subscribes, and collaborates around conversations, creating essentially a knowledge base that you can use to attract the value to go through a 1-hour call in around 5 minutes. They're a global startup based in 11 countries across 41 cities, if my information is correct, Krish.
Yeah.
Tell me, why and what was the reason for you to go out and create Fireflies? What was the motivation?
Yeah, for me, I get asked this question a lot about why meetings. And the reason is quite simple. We're spending so much time in meetings, and we all believe that meetings can be productive, not just scheduling of meetings, but having meetings and what value we get out of them. You look at corporate America, just corporate globally, right? In terms of how much time we spend in meetings, the billions of dollars that are spent having conversations. And usually people, managers, employees will say, let's put that on our calendar and let's talk about it, right? And I was at Microsoft, I've done that as well, like where we just had tons and tons of meetings when I was a product manager. And I always felt like meetings can be way more valuable if we remembered every single conversation that we had. We can get notes from those meetings automatically. What if we can get every person to have their own AI secretary? And that was really the origin points of focusing on meetings. And we started building this AI note taker like Fred that joins your meetings and starts recording and transcribing, analyzing, summarizing all the calls. And that just started a revolution of its sort. And we realized, wow, meetings is powerful, but it's even more powerful if you can organize all your meetings and all that knowledge from those meetings into one conversational knowledge base. And that's what we decided to do meetings.
Krish, when you started out, was there anyone doing something similar, or was there no one doing this in the market?
Yeah, so there are people that look at voice in a couple of different angles. There's definitely lots of people that were working on chatbots and conversation and natural language processing systems. We've seen in call centers and contact centers where people were working on call analytics, right? To do quality assurance of what reps are saying on calls and analyzing them, looking at sentiment and so forth. We've seen primarily in customer-facing orgs like sales and contact centers and support, but we had a much broader and encompassing vision of how do we bring it to every conversation, whether it's your one-on-one meetings, your HR meetings, your recruiting meetings, sales meetings, internal meetings. How can we build a product like Zoom or like Calendly, right, that works across the entire organization like Slack? And I think credit goes to also our early investors and advisors, because they've told us, like, stick to your vision, because most people will go chase the lowest hanging fruit where there's a lot of money to be made, which is usually sales and support. But for us, we had this larger vision of building a platform that every person inside an organization can use, not just your salespeople. And so one of our first and early investors in Fireflies, April Underwood, was previously the chief product officer at Slack. And she encouraged us to stick with that vision and say, go door to door inside an organization. If you can get one person inside an organization to love it and use it as a single user, it will slowly spread. And quickly, we started spreading inside organizations. People started using it. Teams started using it. And it started the snowball effect. And so, yeah, in that approach, we were probably unique and in that angle in our go-to-market. And also, from a technology point of view, the way we built our platform has to really scale to support hundreds of thousands of millions of conversations. So that was also different. And there's a lot of R&D and engineering work that has to go into it.
We're going to go into this in a little bit of depth in a bit. But before we do, so you talk about your vision now. Talk me through your original MVP. What did your original MVP look like?
Yeah, so way back, early, before we even had a product, like early MVP, was we talked to a few friends and friendlies and like mutual advisors and stuff. And what we did was we had human service, right? Where you'd have a human join in like a secretary and take notes for you on calls. So we had that for a few of our advisor friends. And again, there's a lot of other things. You can't just go do this for a corporate or, Fortune 500 or something like that, right? Unless you got proper audits. So we just picked friendlies where like they were small businesses or independent like contractors. And we did that like test with maybe 5 or 6 people at that time. And then people were like, I really like this and I'm willing to pay hundreds of dollars per month for this sort of service. Obviously they would, because it's a human taking notes for them. And it's like having their own secretary on demand. And so we had 2 options here. One was, do we scale this into a business where we have like a human in the loop secretary that takes notes, and we basically are at a marketplace for executive assistants? The other option was, no, we got to figure out how to automate this with technology, right? With transcription, ASR, natural language, and improve the system. We obviously chose the harder route, which was to solve the technology piece, because we wanted to scale, because we looked at the market, right? And if there's millions, billions of people out there that are going to be having meetings, like we can't hire a person for every single one of them. So that's the vision. That was the starting point. So first MVP was literally having me, my co-founder, maybe one or other person, like being the secretary and taking notes and just seeing what worked, what didn't work, what type of notes people liked, didn't like. 2, moving to a platform where we started having an automated service that did the transcription. Then it started using machine learning to summarize and create bullet point notes. And you had to cross the chasm, because that second product is not going to be as good as that human note taking. So it's been quite a journey over the last 3-4 years, where we've gotten to the point where the system, the accuracy, the type of output that comes is very, very similar to what a human would do. And so we were really happy about that, and we've continued to push along that.
What did the kind of the transition to the AI route, what did that look like? How did you have to, what kind of work behind the scenes did you have to put in to make that transition within, let's say, the first year?
Yeah, so initially you have to actually get the ASR to be accurate, right? Like 70% is not enough, 80% is not enough. The early technical hurdle is this even going to be accurate? Is it going to pick up the right stuff? So the first couple of years, the challenge is the technology viable? Can you actually go to market and commercialize this? Will this be something people pay for? After that, it was about, okay, great, people are going to pay for it. The technology works. How do we make the models better? And that's always a work in progress. Even now, like we can make the notes far, far better if we continue at it. We've introduced new things like GPT-3 from OpenAI and using that to improve the summarization technique so that it looks like a human summary, like where it's paraphrased and written like in paragraph format. So we worked on that. And we also like look at customization and how do we improve like the detection of unique words and vocabulary. So yeah, it's a continuous process in terms of machine learning, data, training, but that's only what everyone thinks when it comes to an AI company. But at the root of it, we're also building this massive voice over IP company, meaning we have to have the infrastructure, the real-time streaming, the architecture of like a YouTube or Twitch or, like a Skype. And having Fireflies join all these thousands and hundreds of thousands of calls. So there's a lot of infrastructure work that goes in. So the team is actually built 24/7, right? We have SRE team, like everyone's there 24/7 to monitor the systems. And I always have that saying, I can be late to a meeting, but Fireflies can't. Fireflies has to always show up, work 24/7, daily, every hour of the day, weekends, holidays, it doesn't matter. So there's a lot that goes into that, right? So if you were to use a system like, say, your CRM, and it goes down for like 10 minutes, it's no big deal. Or your Facebook goes down for 10 minutes, you can always log back in. But if we're down for 10 minutes, we're going to miss like hundreds of meetings, right? So the uptime and reliability, scale forces you to build architecture and really sharpen your, engineering chops.
Tell me the challenges that came with that, with building this architecture at such a speed. Yeah, 3-4 years is not a long time to get where you are now. And also, like you said, if something was to drop for 10 minutes, that's it. I mean, that's a big chunk of time gone. How did you build this architecture to be reliable enough to know that it's not going to drop?
Yeah, so different companies take different approaches to building architecture. Most startups that don't have a lot of funding, that are bootstrapped like we were in the early days, will just write some code, glue it together, one big monolith, and throw it on the wall. And their whole goal is, it doesn't matter if the code is neat or ugly, does the product work? Like, does the exterior of the product like actually work and do what we promised to do? And then you have other companies that have a lot of funding and have resources, where you look at a company like Apple. they'll make beautiful phones, but they'll also make the way that the chip is designed beautiful. Like, so when you actually open up an Apple or iPhone, you can actually look at how beautifully it's designed. It's not like anyone's looking at it because this just shows that they're making everything perfect from both the code level, the hardware level, the chips to the actual end product. So there had to come a time where we had to rip and replace and decide that, hey, we can't just band-aid the solution. So there was a transition period in 2019 where we ripped everything out, built the architecture from scratch right before the pandemic. And that was actually a very important thing that we did, because with the pandemic, volume shot through the roof because everyone went remote. And if we had not done that before January 2020, we would have been in a very difficult situation.
Let's stick with the MVP a little bit and the transition to this tech universe, which you've got now. How did you build the tech transition part at the beginning? Did you outsource? Did you build in-house? Did you hire in-house? What did you do?
Yeah, initially, we used services like Twilio for voice over IP, which is really expensive, but Twilio is a great company. ASRs, we tried many different vendors. We've experimented with many vendors. We built our own ASR engine in the early days. So we've had to eventually take a hybrid solution where there are some parts where you just go, right? Like AWS or servers or Kubernetes, where you just go and use the services out of the box so that you can deploy faster. And then there's other parts where you have to build like things on your own, like your NLP models and your note-taking models and things like that. So it was a trade-off, but it was a mixed bag. Like we had to do a mix of both. If we have the luxury and if we have many years to deploy something and we're coming out of an R&D project at like a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company, then we can take our sweet time, like 2 years, and build everything right from scratch, right? So it's this allure for engineering teams to say like, we could build a beautiful product if we just had more time. But to be honest, like you never have enough time. And if you do that, you're going to be 1 year down and say, oh, we're going to need another year. You're going to be 1 year down. You're going to need another year. So sometimes, as much as I hate it, you have to put something out there that's imperfect and then shape it, improve it, iterate on it in like a agile fashion, rather than saying, I'm going to take 3 years and I'm going to release the best product out there. But the reality is you could spend 3 years building something amazing, and then your customer stress test it and then break things along the way, right? So your true feedback is when it's in the hands of real people using it, because they're going to find bugs, edge cases, things that you would never identify. And so I think we literally had to learn by, trial by fire, right? Like where it's live.
First of all, you're saying that the product is being used globally, yeah? There are lots of difficulties that come with language when people speak, accents, accents, the way people speak, the words people speak. How did you tackle that? Because obviously an accent from someone from Australia to India to America to the UK is completely different. What did you do here?
Yeah, so we support English today, and we plan to do other languages end of this year and maybe early next year, Spanish, French. So there's a lot of interesting languages that we want to be able to support. There's a global market appetite for that. But even in English, right, you can have an Australian accent, you can have an Indian accent, you can have a British accent. So we've had to, segment, identify our models, and then feed different data points, right? Saying like, hey, this is British English, this is US English, and then you train on more and more of that in an anonymous fashion without identifying customers or anything other than, hey, this call is coming from the UK, or this call is coming from this recording, this notes, this is coming from another country like the US. So even in the US, you have many accents, right? You have a Southern accent, you have the East Coast, like Jersey accent. So you start to learn and build and segment your data better. That's probably the starting point. And then you learn to get better. The other thing is our system is built so that it's self-improving, self-healing, meaning as people make corrections, edits, and changes, that also naturally feeds back into the system and helps the system learn what's right versus what's wrong.
How often do you update your AI system?
Yeah, so it'd be nice to say that it's automatic self-updating, but in reality, we have to run it like in a batch, maybe every month or two, or every couple weeks, depending on where we're at. And we also have this long-term vision of where we can have it self-updating as soon as it gets to stat sig, or where it reaches a certain amount of data. Like that's the North Star. That's really the Facebook newsfeed algorithm, right? Where it updates in real time based on the content you like. It starts showing you more stuff related to that. So we can probably hopefully get there, and maybe we can deploy models at a company level. So if you're talking about unique acronyms or language inside your company, can it improve for your company, right? Like let's say Tesla is using Fireflies. Can Fireflies improve the outputs for that company based on that topography or that language that's being spoken there?
Let's talk about team. Yeah. So when you were building in the beginning, obviously you said, so you started with around 3 of you, you've got your co-founder and your CTO, Sam. How did you build your team within the first year, and to what number did you build in the first year?
We had to hire out of necessity a lot of times because many of the roles like we needed to fill because with all these issues popping up, all these system level stuff, we needed dedicated resources on hand. And so we had to start building teams before you have generalists, which is great. When you're early at a company, you hire generalists that can take on multiple tasks. They can wear a hat and like different hats and do different work. And then later, you need to start specializing for different teams. Still have that generalist culture where people can hop between different challenges, but you start having a defined team. You have an integrations team. You have a team that's focused on like the Zoom integration. Then you have like a team that's like dedicated to the transcription and language models. So you start breaking things down, and then the early folks know how to navigate across the system, right, seamlessly.
Tell me here, so there was something very interesting which I saw on kind of your values and your team values for people that want to join. Tell me, there it's saying that you expect and you want your team to improve by 10% every week, sorry. How do you manage this? How do you manage this, and how do you assess this as well to see if your team is improving 10% every week?
Wow, you've done your research, so that's awesome. That is one of our values at Fireflies, where we want to look at, are we getting better each week compared to where we were in the past? So my co-founder and I have that like mindset of what are we doing now and how are we doing it differently last year? If we don't feel like, wow, I am much better as a person, as a leader, as an engineer now than I was a year ago, 6 months ago, then what is our purpose here, right? Like if we're not improving ourselves and if we're not getting better, learning from our mistakes, then like what's the point? Like our whole reason for existence is trying to perfect and craft our skills. So that's really something we aim for. And when we have folks that are hard workers and are talented, but they may not be at that potential of being a 10 out of 10, but they can work their way up. We've seen a lot of folks on our team that have proven that over time. We've also seen people, right, where we've interviewed where they think they're a 10 out of 10, but in reality, they're stagnant. So I think that growth mindset or that culture of always trying to learn, be inquisitive, and do things that you don't know is really important, especially in a remote context. It's easy for people to get away with doing the bare minimum, right? Because your manager's not literally sitting next to you or monitoring what you do. And it's easy to put in minimal effort until someone calls you out. So we have that culture at Fireflies where, no one's gonna come like ping you 10 times. Like you're doing it and you are motivated and you're enjoying what you do and you're asking and seeking feedback actively, right? So you have to be a proactive person. It takes a certain type of DNA to work at a company like ours, and it's intense. And we've had people like where we have this program where, some folks within the first couple of months, we say it's perfectly okay if you don't feel like this is a fit or this is a home for you. And there's no shame in like wanting to not continue. So we have a program called the Trial by Fire program. We call it the Campfire program. And if people are not able to really feel like they can excel in that first 1 month, 2 month checkpoint, usually we don't even have to go tell them. They'll just say like, hey, I can't keep up with the pace here. This is like way too intense for me. And so they naturally select themselves out. And there's other folks where we think like, wow, I'm not quite sure about this person, but they have a really good work ethic. We'll give them a shot. And then we are blown away at how fast they bloom and then take that responsibility and really run with it. So growth is probably the most important driver. Like everything is grow, like interest is compounding, skills are compounding, experience is compounding. So yeah, that's why you want to get better 10% month over month, not just your metrics, but also your people and their skills.
Talk to me about, you've got this idea of you need to go at speed. Yeah, a startup needs to go at speed, otherwise you're going to fall behind. So you need to kind of fail fast. Talk to me about this approach and what kind of pivots. Let's go for this. What has been the biggest mistake you've actually made at Fireflies, which you've learned from to fail fast and move forwards?
Yeah, so the fail fast concept is great in the early days when you're experimenting with lots of features. The places where you don't want to fail too fast is when you're looking at your core, right? Your core team, your core infrastructure. There, things take time. All good things take time. And I believe that sometimes we didn't give like an initiative enough time or to fully test it out, right? And maybe we were just at the cusp of something great, and then we said, actually, no, let's move on from it. So it's like a lot of things in life where you may have to sometimes give it more time. Failing fast is absolutely important because you know what you're doing and where things are breaking and where things don't work out. But I would say like sometimes you don't want to give up too prematurely, right? So there are things where greatness comes when you are able to go that extra 5%. Like getting to 95% may not be enough for certain initiatives. For most initiatives, 80% gives you a signal to decide if it's a go or no go. But there's some initiatives where you have to have the gut belief and intuition and knowledge and some data to tell you we're at 90%, but let's actually get to 95%. If we don't, then that's the difference between breaking it or making it. That's how so many startups, right? You look at Airbnb, you look at many of these startups, Uber, where they got to this critical mass where it wasn't enough, and they had to just go an extra inch, another step further, and then things started accelerating for them. That's what many people call product market fit. But product market fit is not something that just happens one time, right? When you're building something, product market fit happens everywhere. It happens in the people you hire, the teams you build, the features you roll out. It's not just product market fit for, okay, do I have something that people care about? Fireflies as a platform has evolved as well, right? Over the past couple of years, it's not just an AI note taker, it's a full end conversation intelligence platform. So if we just stayed as a note taker, the market would have moved on ahead. So we have to also keep pace with the market. So yeah, I think there are some things that you have to invest time and energy in cultivating. And that's actually where I would correct myself in saying failing fast doesn't work all the time.
Talk to me about, so with tech challenges, let's keep on to this kind of theme at the moment. What has been the biggest tech challenge which you faced recently?
Yeah, so we had a really interesting incident with one of our vendors. So we use Elasticsearch for some of our search functionality inside Fireflies, and we're working with the vendor. We've never had issues with them. They were a great service, but unfortunately, they had to go down, and there wasn't a clear timeline of when they would get back up. This was literally at 8 or 9 p.m. at night, and it was going on for 3 hours. Usually, I'm sleeping at 2 a.m., so I'm like checking back, and the SLAs weren't very clear with this vendor. And this was just about a few weeks ago. And something felt off to me. And I told my team, hey guys, we need a backup because a lot of customers are not going to be able to say their meeting notebook. And we need to get that search function back up. And usually you'd think, okay, it's down, the service is down, AWS is down, or this vendor is down, Elasticsearch is down. They'll be back up in, like 10 minutes or an hour or two. But this wasn't happening. And then we realized that company was actually going out of business because they weren't able to work things out with their provider. And it was just a really, really difficult situation for them. But they didn't reveal that till 2 days later. So the SLAs were very unclear. We were fortunate to be proactive enough to run the Elasticsearch off of our own database and create a makeshift environment. It's like almost like if the power goes down, you set up a generator so you get some of the power back up so that people are not complaining. And then we did several weeks worth of work over 2 nights and built our own Elasticsearch instance and built it and decided to not even depend on a third-party vendor and manage it ourselves, right? So that's where we realize sometimes even vendors can let you down, people that you pay to maintain and manage certain services. So we are getting to that phase in time where SLAs are absolutely critical. And even though that wasn't an issue caused by what we did, it was just because of a server outage at somewhere else, customers are not going to always understand that, like, hey, I can't access some of my meetings, like what's going on? So it was a tough 48 hours. We created this like war room situation where we had a 24/7 call going all the time. People would check in and check out. So I would stay on that call till 3 a.m. PST. And then my co-founder who's in New York would hop on at 7 a.m., around that time, EST. And then the call would continue and people were cycling in and out. Engineers were coming in and out across the regions. And really, it was a moment where everyone got together to help solve that issue for customers. So it's those crazy situations where like, why are we even doing this? Like, why do I even exist? Like, there are days where you're like, this is amazing. I love working at a startup. And there are days where like, what the heck? Like, this is crazy, like shit. Like, I don't want to deal with this. But at the end of the day, the only reason you feel like doing it is because you have a great team behind you, actually in front of you, driving it. And you have customers that are patient with you and willing to give you that feedback and reassurance to keep continuing every day.
Tell me a little bit more here about, we're going to go into you and your background and your experience moving into a CEO. And in the past, you worked for Microsoft as a PM. What experience did you get from that, which you were able to bring into Fireflies?
Yeah, so from my time at Microsoft, something I realized is great products require a lot of dedication and a lot of attention to detail. Even if you were shipping a small feature at Microsoft, you had a bunch of people look at it, review it before deploying. So that culture, that engineering culture of shipping great products definitely came. And I took that for granted in the early days. I'm like, why aren't we just going to production? Like, this is a small change, let's just go live. And then you don't realize it until you're building it yourself internally, why you need those checks and guardrails in place. And so we had to learn what it means to build a good team and ship good products and have reliability and have quality code reviews, all of those things. So I learned that process, that engineering process at Microsoft. And I think it took us time, but we've had to go down that road. I think all great software companies have that culture, and they don't have it on day one, but they learn to adapt and build that over time. The other thing I learned at Microsoft was the need for business software, right? So Microsoft created incredible software over the last 30 years, Word, PowerPoint, all of these things. Excel drives like an entire industry on Wall Street. So many of these products are also used in a consumer setting, right? They're not just used in a corporate setting. So I think Microsoft was one of the first companies to blur the line between consumer and enterprise, and by building great software that's used by consumers as well as enterprises. And when we built Fireflies, we had the same idea that a one-person company should be able to find value from Fireflies, as well as a 1,000-person company. And how you build and how you add the feature sets to make it more valuable for teams over time was something that we constantly thought about. And so today, if you're a one-person company, you can use Fireflies for note-taking purposes. If you're a 100-person sales team or a 200-person headhunting team, you can use Fireflies as well. And it works and functions differently for larger teams. So that's been also an evolution of how do you take a simple product, simple use case, and then build an actual platform that an entire business can run around.
Tell me though, with regards to obviously what you learnt at Microsoft and bring it into a CEO, but what did you not have when you moved into being a CEO? What skills did you have to acquire?
Yeah, so I was a product manager, and that means like you have influence, but you don't have authority, right? So you have influence to make changes, but you're not really running a team where people report to you directly. So that's the challenge of being a PM, is you have to influence people, convince people to do things that you feel are right or going to have a strong impact at the company, but they don't report to you. They don't owe you anything, right? And that's a tough skill that you learn as a PM, where you have to influence and you have to educate and you have to guide people, and you have to build great relationships along the way. Probably the most important thing I learned was respect from engineers comes if you actually know what you're talking about, if you know your shit and you actually can sit with them. Because I talked to so many people, like engineers, like I actually was more closer with engineers than I was with PMs. But there's this common thing in the industry where PMs give wishy-washy, high-level feedback, and the engineers left to do all the hard work, and they're trying to figure out what to do. Whereas a great PM sits with them, understands, writes great specs, communicates, gets down into the weeds, helps test, like does the things that need to be done in order to get the job done, right? And that is much, much harder. Whereas I know a lot of PMs in the industry where, that's the engineer's job. They'll go figure it out. They'll find out. So I was different in that regard, where I said, I don't want to make my engineer's life harder. So I'm going to do everything to remove all the roadblocks and make sure that they're not having to spend extra energy doing things that they don't have to write code for. So being extra clear in my thought process, saying no to a lot of things. Like, I think one of the most important lessons in life is to be able to learn to say no. So any excess. And I used to get that feedback from engineers saying, you're actually thinking about us and you're helping us do as little work as needed and not waste time doing unnecessary stuff. So that was actually really, really important for me. And I think that skill set, I had to learn on my own, because sometimes you're around people where that's not what's always followed. And I think when I came into Fireflies and started building a team, it was that on steroids, because there is no right or wrong answer to what you're doing. Ultimately, you are responsible for your actions and what you build and what you put out there. So I always believe that you have to know what the heck you're actually working on and be in the weeds, roll up your sleeves, get dirty, and understand stuff. That's how you earn the respect of your engineers, not by writing a high-level spec or being wishy-washy in your answers or being vague. So attention to detail, specificity, that's how you earn the respect, and making sure that their life and job is easier. That has transcended to how we work with our PMs, how we teach them, and how we work with our engineers. This is the culture we've kind of set. And I think it's definitely different than like most companies where PMs think, oh, I'll take care of the business side of things, or I'll take care of the product side of things or design side of things, when in reality, you're responsible for the ideation, the data collection, the building, the shipping, and the ultimate reaction to what you ship. So you really have to be the CEO of your feature, of your product. I learned that at the product level, at the feature level, and then I was able to kind of take that at a product level at Fireflies.
Okay, we've got 2 more quick questions, and then I'm going to let you go because it's very late your side. But before we do, tell me, talking about AI, where do you see in the future, what kind of future trends do you see coming within the next couple of years in AI?
Yeah, with AI, even when I look at it today, I think voice has become ubiquitous. You see Alexa, Siri at in the household. What we're doing in the B2B space, the enterprise space with a voice assistant, I'm just very, very amazed at how fast transcription, accuracy, and stuff has improved drastically in the last 3 years, let alone last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this technology is going to become democratized and used regularly, just like how cloud and mobile and some of these like computing trends came about. Voice and AI and transcription and NLP, it's going that way. I'm super excited about getting models to understand intent. OpenAI, GPT-3, if you've ever seen that, like I think that's a great example of it, where it's able to understand, parse text, and then come up with a really good output, right? Reading comprehension, like where give AI an article to read and then answer reading comprehension questions on it. Wow. And so those are really, really powerful. So one of the things I would love to do at Fireflies is after a meeting, ask questions, right? Like ask the AI the question. So, hey, from this meeting, what were the 3 things Sam wanted to focus on this quarter? Wow. Or what were the biggest challenges with closing that deal last month? What is the biggest objection that this customer has in order for the deal to move forward? What are the most important skill sets of this candidate we're trying to hire? Imagine being able to have AI do reading comprehension, where it doesn't have to extrapolate. It's actually literally looking at the text, understanding it, synthesizing it, and giving you answers like that. Like Google does that today, right? You ask it a question, who was the 45th president or the 50th president, and they'll give you an answer. So in the same way, I think I'm really excited about AI understanding intent and coming back with answers. And now imagine doing that on all of your knowledge that your team has had, right? So I can go back and like I say, hey, 6 months ago, what was this architectural decision that we made, and why was it made, and who decided on it? Fireflies could theoretically pull that up, right? Like once we build this sort of technology.
That is incredible. I mean, that would make life 100 times more easier for me myself as well. But I guess that's the amazing part of technology. It's this idea that it's making life just so much easier. It makes our jobs so much easier. At the same time, gives us more time, so then we can focus on the other things, which is generally filled out by more work. So it doesn't fill us up for free time, but allows things to move forwards much quicker. Tell me, last question for you, Krish. So I've seen that you and Sam, your CTO and co-founder, achieved the roles of, achieved the reward, of 30 under 30 from Forbes. And you have recently been on a cover of, let me see if I can find it here, the Entrepreneur Maga, yeah? So how did you manage this? These are big feats to pull off. This is a lot of work. What could be your advice to other founders out there to get this kind of recognition and to be this so successful 3-4 years into a startup?
Yeah, no, thank you. Honestly, the Entrepreneur Magazine cover or Forbes 30 under 30 is a byproduct of focusing on the product and focusing on building something that customers love and improving on that. And all the other stuff is a result of you're building something that satisfies some need for somebody. And if they like it enough, they'll talk about it. I think the greatest form of marketing is when someone talks positively about you and recommends you to another person versus you marketing yourself. I was never a big believer in you having to market yourself or toot your own horn and, do any of that stuff. So it was a lot of these were because people that have seen Fireflies, worked with us, or experienced anything we've done in that circle or in that periphery where they're like, hey, these guys are onto something special. So I'm really thankful for the mentors, the advisors, the people in our network who were fortunate enough to recognize that and give us a chance, right? From our investors down to our teammates to our customers, right? Like we were these like 22, 23-year-old kids with barely any work experience saying we have a dream and we want to go work on this. So I think when they give you that opportunity, I don't want to ever let someone down. That's super important to me. So I take it as a responsibility to be very diligent, to improve as much as I can. And yes, I'm going to make mistakes along the way, but yeah, just not give up, right? Like half the battle is not giving up. But yeah, so I think like I don't have a direct answer to like the Forbes 30 under 30 or being on the cover of Entrepreneur Magazine, but everything we've gotten is a result of us not chasing those, but rather focused on building product and building something substantial. I think you know, even some of the most successful people will probably be able to say that, right? That are far many leagues ahead of us. They got to where they are because of the service they built, the product they built, and all of that recognition was a byproduct of them doing something great, building something great. And I think that's the allure of the entrepreneurial journey is all those other things come if you are focused on your craft.
Hey guys, it's me again. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, be sure to press the thumbs up button below. And also, whilst you're there, hit subscribe. Otherwise, you could miss out on all of our interesting content we've got coming your way in the near future. Okay, guys, take care and see you soon.